1962 and 63 was a year that's very famous for a trial where prayer was taken out of our schools. Does anybody remember the atheist that pushed that through? Madalyn Murray O'Hair. Write that down. Early 60s, Madalyn Murray O'Hair. What happened, there's quite a story about that. You might want to get a book if you'd like studying this topic. The book is called My Life Without God. My Life Without God by William Murray. Madalyn Murray O'Hair had 2 illegitimate children. She chose the last name for one of them from the father of the child, though it was not her husband. She never did marry him. He was an illegitimate child. His name was William Murray. William, they were in school in, I think, Brooklyn, if I recall. It's been a while since I read the book. Madalyn Murray O'Hair had gone to the Soviet Union asking to be a Soviet citizen. She hated America. Actually, she went someplace in Europe and was writing letters begging, please let me in. I'm a communist. I want to live in a communist country. They kept writing her back saying, we don't want you. Because your work record shows you never keep a job more than 6 months. You get mad at the boss for something and quit. You're a troublemaker. You're lazy. We don't want you. She finally got the message and came back to America, to Brooklyn, when she realized the communists wouldn't take her. Now her son, William, I think was in 9th grade, if I recall. She takes him to school about 2 weeks late. I think it was mid-September when this happened. She came back. She said, well, William, I guess I got to put you back in this, capitalist school here in America. She's taking him to the principal's office to sign him up for school. And a few minutes late, school had just started, and over the PA system comes the principal. Let's all stand and pray. She hit the ceiling. All 600 pounds of her. Oh, man, what's going on here? She said, do they make you pray every day here? He said, oh, yes, ma'am, we pray every day. Now, William's a 9th grader, not saved, lost as a goose. And he sees this as an excuse to cause a little trouble. And so his mom said, I'm going to sue the school for making my kid pray. She went in, banged on the desk, and said, I don't want my kid to pray. The principal said, ma'am, if you'd like your son to stand in the hall, that's perfectly fine, but we pray at our school. So sure enough, she filed a lawsuit. The lower court threw it out. Said, this is stupid. They can pray if they want. She appealed it. Went to the appellate court. They threw it out. She appealed it again and lost. I believe it was on the 4th try. It went to the Supreme Court, and she won. One atheist was determined to get prayer out of schools. And in 1962 or 3, the court ruled we cannot have mandatory prayer in schools. They never said anything about teaching creation. They never said anything about reading the Bible. They just said we cannot have mandatory prayer in schools. So prayer was taken out of our schools. By this time, evolution is being sucked into the vacuum, and kids are being taught a humanist philosophy. On these next few pages in the notebook, and here on the screen, I'll show you some of the charts of what has happened to our culture since the early 60s. This chart from the Center for Disease Control shows sexually transmitted diseases, STDs. There are now, I think, about 100 of them available. This is for kids 10 to 14 years old, up 385% since 1963. Divorce rates in America since 1963 have skyrocketed. Somewhere around half now of the marriages end in divorce. Well, when I was a kid, when you got married for life. You better pick slow because you're going to be stuck for a long time. Choose carefully. You might get something you don't want, right? But now, man, divorce is it's common. Everybody knows somebody that's divorced. I didn't know anybody that was divorced in the early 60s when I was a kid. 1963, we saw an incredible increase in violent crimes. Nearly 1,000% increase. I remember, as a kid, we never locked our house. You could go off on vacation for 2 weeks without locking your house. Was it that way when you were a kid growing up? I was in Ukraine speaking over there, and I mentioned about when I was a kid, you never had to lock your house. And I said, what would happen over here if you didn't lock your house? And they bust out laughing all over the room. They know, man, things would be stolen. I was preaching in Costa Rica. Beautiful country. Absolutely perfect weather. Almost everybody there has a 10-foot high wall around their entire property with barbed wire on top of that. Some have fenced off the top. Not just fences on the side, they got a fence off over their house. The preacher, when he took me there, I went and preached in Costa Rica at his church. On the way back, we come up to his driveway, and there's this massive wall around there. He hits a button, and a gate slides open. He drives in, pushes the button, closes the gate, hits another button to open the garage, drives in, hits a button, closes the garage door, and then gets out of his car. Thieves all over the place. Now, America is going to become this way because we're losing the absolute standards. There's no moral. You tell a kid you shouldn't steal. Well, why not? Well, because it's not nice. Well, it's nice for me. I end up with the stuff. See, kids used to believe you shouldn't steal because thus saith the Lord. But what if there is no God? How do you determine right from wrong if there's no God? See, when you remove God and a moral standard, what reason do they have to not commit adultery, to not steal, to not lie, to not kill somebody? What is the reason? I ask people this all the time and never get an answer from the evolutionists. I'll say, okay, if evolution is true, how do you determine right from wrong? What's the basis? How do you decide? Almost every country, almost every religion has some kind of standard of this is right and this is wrong. You have to have that. What does America have now as a standard? Think about our public schools. What is their standard for choosing right and wrong? The standard now is majority opinion. What's everybody else think about it? Look at the politicians. When they decide how to vote on an issue, what do? Take a poll. Who cares what the poll says? What does God say? And we've gotten away from thus saith the Lord, and we've gone to what saith the majority. We got leaders running around. Let's see, which way's the wind blowing? Okay, you lead, or you follow, I'll lead. This is horrible, folks. We have to get back to a standard. When we lost our standard of thus saith the Lord, this is what happened to America. This is birth rates for unwed girls, ages 10 to 14. Now, the birth rates are up 100% since 1963. The pregnancies are up 553%. That means the rest of them are being aborted, murdered. We'll get into more of that on video number 4, about how abortion ties into this evolution philosophy. In 1963, we began to see a tremendous drop in SAT scores, Scholastic Aptitude Testing. What happened? I think we're taking away a standard. All of the branches of science were started by people who believed in creation. They believed in God. Why look for order in the universe if there is no order in the universe? But if you believe God designed the world, then you say, wow, I wonder why He did it like that. When you find a complex machine, you say, wow, I wonder how they built that. Any inquisitive young mind, you give them a neat toy or a new something, take it apart. How does that work anyway, you know? That's good. God gave us a wonderful universe. Man, study it. But suppose there's no God. Well, then there's no reason to look for order. So the branches of science were started by people who believed in creation. 1963, SAT scores began to drop. In 1995, they had to change the SAT test. They dumbed it down. They made the test easier so that the scores would look higher. The scores are not higher. The test is easier. What is your name? George. Ah, you passed. Come on to college. It's not quite that bad, but it's close. Can you throw this ball through that hoop? Oh, hey, you joined. Come on to college. We need you on our team, right? Unmarried couples living together in adultery was just about unheard of in the 60s. I don't remember hearing of anybody that lived together without getting married. The census didn't even keep track of it. It was such a small number. Before 1977, it was not even kept track of. But there's been a 725% increase since 1963 in unmarried couples living together in adultery. Now, God's Word has not changed. Whoremongers and adulterers, God will judge. Hebrews chapter 13. Exodus 20, God said, thou shalt not commit adultery. These are not the 10 suggestions. These are the 10 commandments. This is what God said. And God gave the commandments for our good. The Bible says in Proverbs, the adulterous man will hunt for the precious life. These movie stars glorify all this adultery and, having affairs and all this stuff. It just absolutely ruins everything good they've ever had. Got some close friends in adulterous relationships, just absolutely miserable. They hunt for the precious life. Boy, they really do. Teen suicide rate has gone crazy. I remember as a kid, some of my friends, some people that I knew, committed suicide. But it was very rare. Now it's very common. Again, I think it goes back to the standard, how do you determine right from wrong? If God is the giver of life, then God gets to decide when we take life away. But what if there is no God? Well, then we decide, don't we? If you kiss a frog, it turns to a prince. How many of you believe that? No? There's a formula we've got in here, in the notebook. I should have looked up the address for this. The frog turns to prince. Where is that, Heidi? Do you know?
It's under fairy tales.
Fairy tales.
I taught in school.
Yeah, what page? Oh, the one about time. I remember where it is. Okay. I use this illustration on them a lot. 59, or I think it's earlier in the book. Page 9. Okay. Yeah, about time. Okay, page 9. The universe is not millions of years old. Let's look at this little formula. Frog plus magic spell equals prince. That's obviously a fairy tale, right? But in the textbooks used in the universities of America, they teach the frog plus time equals a prince. Think about it. Isn't that really what it boils down to? There's a word you got to memorize. Put this one down for a quiz question, Heidi. The word farm is the acrostic. F-A-R-M are the first letters. For F is for fish. A is for amphibian. They say that evolved next. A-M-P-H-I-ibian, amphibian. And then F-A-R is for reptile. And then M for mammal. That's a quick way to memorize how evolution supposedly happened. The fish evolved first, and they slowly evolved into amphibians, and they slowly evolved into reptiles, and then they slowly evolved into the mammals and the birds. This is the way they teach it. They're still teaching that the frog turns to the prince. But now it doesn't happen quickly, it happens slowly. If I told you the magician flew through the air across the room, you'd say, well, that's a fairy tale, right? What if I said he walked slowly through the air? It's still a fairy tale, right? Time doesn't change anything. But what it really boils down to is time is the hero for evolution. Did you know back in 1770 they were teaching the earth is 70,000 years old? By 1905 they were teaching it's 2 billion years old. 1969 when they landed on the moon they said the earth is 3.5 billion years old. Now they're saying it's 4.6 billion years old. The numbers keep getting bigger because they're realizing more problems. That wouldn't work. That'd take too long. That couldn't happen. I'm sure they're going to bump this number up. Someday they won't be saying 4.6. They'll be saying 4.7 or 5.0 or who knows. They keep adding time because somehow it gets lost in the human brain. Well, wow, that could be true, you know. No, I'm sorry. It's still frogs don't turn to princes. I don't care how long you give them. Okay, who remembers the atheist Madeleine Murray O'Hair's son's name? Oh, take a raisin. You all got it right. William Murray. Very good. What grade was he in when they took prayer out of schools? 9th grade. Now, the man that came here the other day, Dan, and ran the tractor leveling, he lives in Mobile, worked for a while here. He did the landscaping for Madeleine Murray O'Hair. her atheist headquarters in Texas. He made her a special walking stick. Now, the guy's a Christian. In her cane that she used, the top unscrewed. She did not know that. He unscrewed the top and put a little tiny Bible in there. Here's Madeline Murray O'Hare walking around with a Bible in her hand for years. Never did know it. He said he only saw her smile one time. All the time he worked there. He helped her up out of the chair one time and gave her a big hug. Only time he's ever seen her smile. If you read My Life Without God by William Murray, he gives a little of the history of his mother, Madeline Murray O'Hare. Madeline's mother was just a teenager when she got pregnant out of wedlock. She didn't want to have the baby, so she jumped out of the second-story window trying to have an abortion. Landed flat on her stomach, I believe. Bam, right on the baby. Madeline was born anyway. They said when she was born, the embryonic sac around her was black. The doctor had never seen that before. She was unloved, unwanted from way before she was born. Grew up thinking, nobody loves me, and she was the leader of the atheist organization for years. Everybody needs to know somebody loves you. I don't know the details of the story, and I can't verify that it's true, but I heard from reliable sources that there was a young boy in Germany that went to Sunday school. He was a very poor boy, had no shoes, raggedy clothes, and decided to go to Sunday school one day. One of the deacons met him at the door and said, "Son, you can't come to God's house dressed like that. Go home and get some good clothes, and then you can come back to church." Well, of course, it broke the little boy's heart. He's just trying to go to Sunday school, and he didn't have good clothes. Some deacon turned him away at the door, refused to let him come. That boy grew up and became, I believe, Adolf Eichmann, Hitler's right-hand man. You just never know who you're going to influence when they're a child. You just never know. Somebody should have reached Madeline Murray O'Hare. Somebody should have reached Bill Clinton when he was a kid. Somebody should have. Who knows how many people were passing up? How many kids right now, how many kids today in Pensacola were taught evolution? Thousands of them, right? Who's going to teach them the truth? See, this is our job. One of our jobs is to go into all the world. And a lot of Christians right there, they miss the first part of the Great Commission. Jesus didn't say, build a big building and wait till the world comes to you. That's what most churches are doing, aren't they? Hey, we're here, come to us. They're not going to come to you. Go ye into all the world and preach the gospel to every creature. And then teach them to observe all things whatsoever I've commanded you. We need to get out. And average Christian, after they've been saved 4 or 5 years going to church, they don't have any more lost friends. How many just plain old heathen do you know? Most people, when they first get saved, they're real zealous, and they're the best ones to bring new converts in. But after they've been saved a few years, they don't have any lost friends anymore. We've lost contact with the world, folks, and that's tragic. I don't mean you need to have all heathen friends and hang around with the heathen all the time, but we need to have some lost friends that we're trying to influence. Who are you trying to influence for God right now? You ought to be working on somebody. You ought to have some short-terms you can reach and some long-term. It may take you 30 years to reach them. But they ought to know, that guy's my friend. I can go to him if I have trouble. We've lost contact with the world. The textbooks, though, teach that the frog slowly turns to the prince over billions and billions of years, and it just doesn't happen. I don't know how to get them to see how silly it is, but, folks, it is silly. It's crazy. It doesn't happen. The textbook's magic ingredient, though, to make this change happen is billions of years. All through the books you see phrases like billions of years ago. This is a 4th grade textbook. Millions of years ago, blah, blah, blah. Something happened. Now, Hitler said, if you tell a lie long enough and loud enough and often enough, the people will believe it. How many times is it, by the time a student goes through 12 years of school, here in the Bible Belt, Florida, how many times will he have heard the phrase millions of years ago between textbooks, TV, museum tours? You think several hundred times he's heard that? Probably several thousand times, right? Eventually it gets into his brain and he just thinks, well, it must have happened. After all, I've heard this millions of times. It's propaganda. That's the way it works. I teach the students what you need to do. If somebody says, millions of years ago, just simply ask them the question, were you there? They'll say, well, no, of course I wasn't there. See, the word science, this will be on the quiz, science comes from the word, it literally means to know. That's the simplest definition. Science means knowledge. That would be good enough, or to know. A more expanded definition is knowledge gained by observation or experimentation. Now please tell me, is it possible to know that the earth is billions of years old? Can you observe that? No. Can you believe that? Oh yeah. And when I speak in public schools, I will try to teach the kids the difference between what you know and what you believe. For instance, I'll show them a textbook that says billions of years ago, and I'll say, oh, the kids right there. Does the guy who wrote this book, was he there? No. Does he know it's billions of years old, or does he believe it's billions of years old? And they start to say, oh yeah, he believes it. I use the word think. Does he know or does he think? Well, he thinks it's billions of years old, doesn't he? Is there any way he can know that? Can he observe it? Can he test it? Can he demonstrate it? No. He can only believe it. And once you get the kids to see there's a difference between knowing and believing. Believing is part of your faith, your religion. Knowing is for science. So we can know that everybody calls this the deltoid muscle. Now how did we get that muscle? Oh, now that's what you believe of how it came to be. And people often take the facts and then add their beliefs to the facts and think the two go together. I tell people, hey, beer is sold at football games. Beer has nothing to do with football. And just because evolution is stuck into the book does not mean it has anything to do with science. They're not connected. Beer does not become athletic by association. And evolution does not become scientific by association with science. It is often associated with science, and I'm sorry about that. I'm trying to get it out. But it's not science. Most Americans believe God created the world in the last 10,000 years. These polls are in your book here. I don't remember exactly where. We can find that later, or you can get the data right here off my slide. Mobile Press Register did a poll back in '95, found out that 61% of the population believes the earth was made by God in the last 10,000 years. Another 30% believe God did it, but he used evolution. So that's 91% believe God made the world, either recently or over billions of years, but the fact is God did it. Only 4% were atheistic. Another 6% said, we don't know. Don't know or don't care or didn't answer. So if you've got 91% of the population saying, we believe God made the world, and the evolutionists are out there saying, we can't teach creation in schools because we have to teach what the majority of scientists believe. Say, wait a minute. Not what the majority of people believe. And it's not really fair to say all scientists believe in evolution. Washington Times, 1998, August 31st, had a statement saying 55% of the U.S. natural scientists who study in the natural sciences, believe in Darwinian evolution. Is that everybody? No, 55%. Slightly more than half believe in Darwinian evolution of the scientists. Those are the ones that have not been to my seminar yet. We're working on them, okay? So if somebody says, all scientists believe in evolution, I say, no, wait a minute, no, they don't. Secondly, even if they did, that still wouldn't make it right. You don't decide truth by majority opinion. The majority of scientists for years taught that the planets go around the Earth. That is called the geocentric theory. Is that true? No. Did the majority believe it? Yeah. If a bunch of people believe something, that doesn't make it true. They used to teach a big rock falls faster than a little rock. Galileo changed all that. But for 2,000 years, it had been taught big rocks fall faster than little rocks. Now, here's what I teach the kids to do. If you learn to ask the right questions, you can get people thinking. Aristotle said, a big rock falls faster than a little rock. Everybody believed it. Nobody thought to check it. They just believed it. After all, Aristotle's a smart man. He must be right. Galileo came along with a simple question. He said, if I had a 10-pound rock and a 5-pound rock and I dropped them, which one falls faster? Everybody said, oh, the 10-pound rock. He said, okay, let me ask you a question. If I take my 10-pound rock and I break it in half, but I tie the two pieces together with a string, and I drop it, will it fall like a 5-pound rock or a 10-pound rock? A brilliant question, isn't it? Without doing any experiments, just going through the thought process, he said, what if I broke it into 10 pieces, each weighing 1 pound? But I tie the pieces together with a string and drop it. How will it fall? Wow, that's a good question. He said, fellas, I think we've been teaching something for 2,000 years. It's not true. And we need to learn to do like Galileo did, to get people to question what you believe. I ask evolutionists in debates all the time, would you please answer this question for me very simply? I don't want you to give me a bunch of big fancy words. I just want you to explain it so everybody here can understand it. Do you believe man evolved from a rock? Just give me a yes or no. I was in a debate one time, and this atheist, I asked that question. Boy, he beat around the bush for 15 minutes. After he got all done, going through all this big 15-minute spiel, I said, okay, thank you for the lecture. Now, would you please answer my question? Do you believe man came from a rock? He went off on another big spiel. I said, okay, thank you for all those big words. You dazzled everybody now with your vocabulary. Now, please answer the question. I just want a yes or no. Do you believe we came from a rock? Finally, he said, yes, I do. And the crowd went wild. Well, that's stupid. But see, they don't want it to be quite so simple. One of the most effective things you can do, I think, that works so good for me when I'm on airplanes or talking to anybody about creation, evolution, if I'm on an airplane, I take a napkin and I draw these two lines right here. And I put 4 points on each line. Creation, flood, Jesus, today. Big Bang, earth forming, life starting, today. Somehow, when they talk about it, and they say, well, billions of years ago this happened, if you're only talking about it, it gets lost in the brain. But when you can see it in front of you on a line, all of a sudden it's like, wow, that is kind of dumb, isn't it? This forces them to visualize what they've been teaching. Just simply draw on a line and say, now, do you believe the earth formed 4.6 billion years ago? Yes. And do you believe life evolved out of the rocks? This finally now they got to think about it. Yeah, I guess I do, don't I? And you believe this first life form found somebody to marry? Who was that? And then slowly evolved into everything today. I mean, is this what you believe right here? And that is what they believe, but they don't like it visualized. And just a simple timeline, and these are also in the seminar notebook for you to use here. Okay, we just hurry. We got a few more minutes. In 1799, George Washington was bled to death by his doctors because the doctors believed that if you're sick, your blood is bad. Take out your blood, you get better. Is that how you get better? No. That was taught until just before the Civil War. They were still bleeding people to help them get better. That was called the doctrine of humors. Write that one down. That'd be a good one to have maybe as a quiz question. The doctrine of humors. Heidi, write that one down. That was taught up until, I believe, 1860. If you're sick, your blood's bad. Take out some blood, you should recover. The Bible says right there, Leviticus 17:11, write that one down. Leviticus 17:11, the life of the flesh is in the blood. That was right beside George when they killed him. Right next to him on the table. Leviticus 17:11. How do you tell the age of the earth anyway? Next week we'll go into how do you determine the age of the earth? What does the Bible say about it? What scientific evidence do we have? And we're going to go through slowly the different ways to show the earth simply cannot be billions of years old. We'll start lesson 4 talking about that, the age of the earth. It just can't be billions of years old. Now, here's the problem. Some people need billions of years to make their theory look reasonable. If I told you, you kiss a frog, he turns to a prince, that does not look reasonable, does it? But if you let the frog sit for billions of years, it'll turn to a prince. Somehow, the brain can accept that. They are hiding behind a cloud of time. I ask evolutionists all the time, how can this happen? How can a fish change to an amphibian? Their answer is always, given enough time, that's how their answer always starts. Well, given enough time, stop right there. Time is your enemy. Time makes things fall apart. They decay, they disintegrate, they get worse. Show me anything that improves with time. If you did nothing to your house for 25 years, would it improve? No. I was over in Romania. I don't think they've done anything to the highways in 25 years. They don't improve, folks. Trust me. You drive like this down the straight streets because you're dodging all the potholes. Things don't improve with time. Things get worse. And we're going to talk about, because I think the key issue that Christians need to hit on is how old is the earth? We got some Christians going around teaching it's billions of years old. And folks, it just can't be. We'll cover that next week. Thank you.